Hi YouTube, and welcome back to my channel. So it's now middle of December and another year has come and almost gone, and I thought now is a good time for reflection on everything that I kind of had to deal with in 2019 and where I see myself going in the future. So come along on the little journey of nostalgia with me, as it were. Because, for me, if you're not watching my channel regularly, 2019 has been quite a year for me. And it kind of starts in 2018, when I came out as trans and started talking to a therapist, and then eventually, about 18 months ago, almost exactly to the day now, is when I started my medical transition and starting taking testosterone. But a few weeks before that, in early June of 2018, is when I first met with my endocrinologist for the first time, and some of the unexpected things that I was not expecting to happen, because they're unexpected, yeah, duh. So when I was doing all my research in terms of transitioning and where I wanted to go with my gender identity and everything else, my plans have always been to only have 2 surgeries. I only ever wanted top surgery and a hysterectomy, and that was it. I was like, okay, that's all I need, that's all I want. I don't need bottom surgery, whatever. And now, a year and a half later, I've had 5 surgeries. And I haven't had bottom surgery. So when I first met with my endocrinologist back in 2018, the first meeting we had, we talked about my hormones, and we talked about, my gender transition, and talking, what I talked to my therapist about, and, we kind of went into detail about that, and then he kind of determined, based off my blood work and stuff, like, where to start me at with my testosterone. But he did do a physical exam, because his specialty, besides, he did work with other trans patients, but he also did things like thyroid and diabetes and that kind of thing. So he had a lot of patients from a variety of different endocrinology problems and things. And so he gave me, like, he was testing my lymph nodes and things, and he felt a lump on my thyroid, and I'm like, oh, right. So that started a 6-month journey in 2018 that led me to a year ago in December of 2018 having thyroid surgery and having half of my thyroid removed. So that was the first surgery. It was not a surgery I was expecting, was not a surgery I was planning on, it was not a surgery I thought I ever would need, and there you have it. So I only have half thyroid now. I'm not on any medication for the thyroid yet. We keep expecting to see my thyroid levels get completely wonky and needing it, but my thyroid levels remain relatively normal. There's 2 numbers that they look at. The one number has remained completely steady and has not changed. The other number keeps going up and down a little bit, but it really hasn't gone to any levels where I am needing any supplementation for medication yet. I was hitting some fatigue issues, but we actually determined it wasn't my thyroid because my thyroid levels were completely normal at the time, and I've now been diagnosed with chronic fatigue syndrome, and I'm taking care of that in other ways. But that's, so that was the beginning of my whole journey, and I would not have known about my problems with my thyroid, because my thyroid, like I said, my thyroid levels have always been normal, but I wouldn't have known about the nodules that could have become cancerous. They weren't cancerous when we had the removal, but they could have become. Oftentimes they start off benign and everything, but we've got it removed, and there's no nodules on the other half yet, so everything right now is fine. So going forward, we'll see where that goes. Then, getting into 2019, I started working with my gynecologist, because the other thing I started experiencing earlier this year were very painful cramps, especially while I was orgasming. So, and sorry if that's TMI, but it is what it is. So what can happen when transgender men start taking testosterone is it can cause really painful orgasms where you hit your orgasm and all of a sudden everything that's inside you there cramps in a really painful way, and it can be really, it can be worse than menstrual cramps. I mean, it can be really, really bad cramping, and it'll last like 5 or 10 minutes, and you're just like in agony, and then it goes away. You know, so it's not like persistent pain, but it's pretty bad and intense at the moment it's happening. And I'm not the only transgender guy that goes through this, and yes, that is a possible problem, side effect of being on testosterone while still having a uterus and ovaries and that kind of thing. I did develop fibroids, and there has been some research on menopausal women whose testosterone levels go up as they enter menopause because they're no longer producing estrogen, so their testosterone levels start kind of getting askew, and in some cases those women will develop fibroids, and that can cause that could be one of the causes of the pain. But I have talked to other trans guys out there who've had this, and some of them have had ultrasounds and they didn't find fibroids, or they didn't see any. So there's a number of things where there just isn't enough research out there on transgender guys, and in terms of how the testosterone can affect our uterus and ovaries and that kind of thing. And for me, I wanted a hysterectomy anyway, so this was, you know, the nail in the coffin of, like, finally I have a medical reason why I really do need a hysterectomy, and can we just get all of this crap out of me, please? Unfortunately, because of pushback from my insurance company and everything, my gynecologist was like, okay, let's start with, and this was in April, so we did a diagnostic laparoscopy and a hysteroscopy, and they also performed a DNC, which was I forget what the DNC stands for, but basically they scrape out the lining of the uterus. It's something that is often performed after an abortion, but women who have problems with PCOS and oh, I'm so bad with words, but anyway, any type of problem where you have problems with the lining of the uterus and stuff, they'll often do a scraping of the uterus to try and see if you can relieve the symptoms. And so did all of that, and then while my gynecologist was in there, one of the things she asked me before the procedure was, you sure you don't want your ovary, right? Because I only had one ovary. The other one was removed like 19 years ago for other reasons and everything. So I only had the one ovary, and she's like, you're sure you don't want that ovary? And I'm like, yes, I'm absolutely sure. She's like, well, I'll take it out while I'm in there. And her hopes were that through all of the diagnostics, through the DNC and removing of the ovary, it would remove all sources of pain, and then I wouldn't need the hysterectomy, because she's always kind of been a very anti-hysterectomy person. She's had one herself. She did have, I don't know if it was cervical cancer or uterine cancer, but she had a cancer, and she had to have a hysterectomy, and for her it was a horrible experience, and so she's been very much of a pushback and don't do hysterectomies unless absolutely necessary, which I kind of respected her opinion on that. But she actually, when she went in there and took my ovary out, she actually found it's called an abdominal adhesion, where a section of my intestine was actually stuck to the lining of my stomach, or not my stomach, but the skin behind my ovary and stuff, and that was a source of pain. And so she's like, oh look, we found your source of pain, you should be fine now. And that was one source of pain, because I've always had pain on that side, and especially every time I ovulated, I was always in pain. And it was because when you ovulate, from your ovary, a part of it bulges out as one of the eggs gets ready to be released and stuff. There's a cyst that forms, and those cysts would bump. This is our theory that we've come across now, is that the cyst would bump against that adhesion, and that's where my pain would come from. So that solved that problem. And it was like, oh, thank goodness, but it didn't solve the cramping problem. And the cramping problem did persist even after that procedure. So We waited the 6 or 8 weeks to see how I do, and I was like, no, that cramping problem's still there. She's like, all right, fine, we'll move forward with the hysterectomy, and she did still have to fight with my insurance company, but they did finally agree to it, thank goodness. And then, so in June of this year, I had the total hysterectomy. So in December, I had the thyroid surgery. So, and then in April, I had the oophorectomy and the DNC and all that stuff, and that was under general anesthesia, so it was a full surgery and everything, where I was under and the whole 9 yards. Then in June, I had the total hysterectomy. And then 5 days later, for those of you who have not been watching my other videos, 5 days after my hysterectomy, I had a emergency appendectomy, so that's surgery number 4. They were not expecting it. My gynecologist, I mean, one of the things she did was she checked to make sure everything else looked healthy and normal while she was taking everything out. One of the things she had to do was she had to move my bladder out of the way, and that's apparently, like, when you're doing a total hysterectomy, they kind of have to move the bladder out of the way to remove everything safely and then move it back in place again. And that causes, when you have to go to the bathroom, there's this, like, a pinchy feeling pain when I had to urinate, and it's like, well, that was, and she explained to me why. It's like, yeah, because I had to move your bladder out of the way. I'm like, oh, okay. But she says that she looked at everything and that my appendix looked perfectly healthy at the time she looked at it. But then 5 days later, it was giving me problems, and I was running a fever. I was constipated for 5 days and you expect some constipation after surgery. But I had stopped taking, I had taken like 1 oxycodone after the hysterectomy, and then I just took Tylenol, and that was it. And I was taking a stool softener 3 times a day, and then 5 days later I still was constipated. It was terrible, and I was starting to have pain and discomfort, and but it wasn't like just on one side or anything. It was kind of generalized because, well, I hadn't gone to the bathroom. Plus I was starting to run a fever, so it was like, okay, let's go to the ER and get me checked out because something's wrong. And that's when they did a CT scan, and oh, you have you have an inflamed appendix, we need to remove it. So there was surgery number 4, which was again unexpected, and like, oh, well, look at that. Thankfully they were able to do it laparoscopically, and they were able to use 2 of the 3 incisions that my surgeon had done for the hysterectomy, and they only did 1 new incision because with everything that they removed, they only had to do everything on the left side, and so they didn't do an incision on the right. So, and of course the appendix is on the right, so they had to do 1 new incision over there just to kind of get at it and remove it properly and everything. So, and at the time when that surgeon went in, because he knew I had just had a hysterectomy, he checked and made sure that everything was healing properly from the inside perspective. So I got confirmation that I was healing well and everything from the hysterectomy. So, and then that took about 3 months for me to heal. And in the meantime, I went ahead and started looking at surgeons for my top surgery, because one of the things that happened, now I was not planning on having a hysterectomy and top surgery back to back that close together. I was thinking like doing that years apart. However, because of the insurance situation here in the US and how expensive everything is and deductibles, and it's complicated. Maybe I'll make another video on that stuff at another time, but I had maxed out my deductible, which was $2,000, and I had maxed out what's known as your out-of-pocket maximum. So the maximum out-of-pocket that your insurance expects you to pay before they start kicking in 100% was $6,300. So both of those were maxed out because of all the other surgeries I had this year. So because I maxed all that out, I was like, oh, I can now, if I go in for the top surgery now, they'll cover it 100% if they approve it. Otherwise, they'll only cover like 50 or 80%. I forget. It depends on the type of surgery and where it's classified at, and if you're in network and out of network, that kind of thing. So the surgeon I found that was actually recommended to me was thankfully in network for my insurance, and I was maxed out and everything, so they managed to get it approved. I did have to go a little back and forth with my therapist to make sure that they sent the right letter with the right wording to say yes, that I have gender dysphoria, yes, I am, you know, transgender and everything, and, you know, this is a gender affirming surgery, and this, that, and the other. So we got everything approved. The insurance said yes, thank you, and just this last November, I finally had my top surgery, so that's surgery number 5. So in the last 12 months, since last December, I've had 5 surgeries, when all I really wanted were 2. But because of insurance and this, that, and the other, and just like the whole craziness that's going on in the US with all that, you know, I had to have 1 extra surgery just with the hysterectomy, and ended up needing 2 surgeries for that to happen, and then I had 2 extra surgeries of things I wasn't expecting, thyroid and appendix. But now I've got all my surgeries done. Still not planning any bottom surgery. I'm perfectly happy with where my genitalia is, and that I'm leaving that alone. And for anyone out there who wants to say, well, if you don't have a dick, you're not a real man, or any of that crap, you know, for anyone who wants to come here and nitpick at me, it's like, you know what, I don't care. I have, you know, when you take testosterone, it causes bottom growth. And believe it or not, the clitoris and the penis are both made of the same tissue. In fact, when embryo is developing in the womb, before it becomes a fetus and everything, they're identical. And you have identical structures between your legs. And it's only as you're developing, and because of the chromosomes, they turn on and off different hormones, and because of those hormones, different things get, you know, you start out the same, and then things get configured slightly differently. But we both, male and female, have prostates. They call it a Skene's gland in women, but it's actually, they've actually started thinking about renaming it to the female prostate, because it's the same thing. It doesn't quite do the same thing, because while it produces the same type of fluid as a male prostate does, and it's the reason for the G-spot in women, and it's also the reason for the G-spot in men. Just for men, you reach it through the anus, and for women, you reach it through the vaginal canal, but in both cases, stimulating it feels good for most people. And they both produce the same kind of fluid, and that's what causes some women to squirt. And because it's connected to the bladder and the urethra, just like the prostate is in men. And it's also the only thing is that I don't produce sperm for the fluid in the Skene's gland or the prostate to mix with and things. But structurally, the penis and the clitoris, like I said, are very, very similar. The penis is just larger, and you know, larger and girthier and stuff. And as I'm taking testosterone, mine is getting longer and slightly girthier. It's never going to be a full-size penis, but I am growing basically a micropenis. And, you know, if you want to say it's not a dick, it's a clit, whatever, you know, that's not an insult to me. It does bother some trans people. It probably bothers most trans people, but I just don't give a shit. So, you know, have at it if you want to. You're not going to offend me, because, you know, I'm at an age where I just literally don't give a shit. I'm happy with my genitalia. I feel very masculine now. I think my voice sounds very masculine. Within the next year or 2, I should have the ability to grow a full beard. My facial hair is coming in quite well right now. I mean, it's still not completely thick enough that you can really see it unless I grow it out further. And I just trimmed it a week ago, so it's still not that visible, but it's there, and it's growing in, and it will. I definitely have the signs that I will be able to grow a full beard. I'm pretty sure that that's going to happen. It's just, these things take time. I still have some fat redistribution happening and things, and my face will masculinize more. I think my jawline will angle out more and that kind of thing. So in another year or 2, you won't be able to tell me on the street next to any other guy. other than the fact that I'm short. But short guys exist. I like to remind myself that actors like Tom Cruise, he's only 5'7". He's really not that tall. So you don't have to be a tall guy to be considered handsome and good looking and that kind of thing. And for anyone who was like, you know, well, no one's going to want to date you, it's like, I don't give a shit about that either. I have had my share of relationships in my lifetime before I came out. I was happily married for 10 years. Sadly, he passed away 4 years ago. And, you know, I kind of been there, done that. Had my soulmate in my life. I had a wonderful 10 years with him. I am positive he would have accepted my transition. It was a discussion that we'd had. I mean, I hadn't come out to myself yet, but we had talked about gender on a number of different levels, on a number of different occasions, not in terms of like, hey, I'm trans and I want to transition, but the fact that when I was a child I would identify as a boy. And we kind of played around with those concepts and things, even in the bedroom sometimes. And so I know that he would not have rejected me for saying, hey, I want to transition. Plus, I know for a fact that my increased libido on testosterone would have made him very, very happy. he kept wanting me to have a higher libido, and he wished that that would happen, and I kind of wish I had transitioned earlier just so that he could have experienced that, and, you know, maybe he'd still be around if I did. So, I don't know. That's another discussion for another time as well. So, besides all of the surgeries and stuff that I've had in 2019, I also accomplished finishing a second novel that I edited and published in August of this year. So, I don't think I've actually shown this on camera yet, but I published it this year. And if you haven't had a chance to check it out yet, there's a link down below. You can look at, you know, you can check out this novel, you can check out my first novel that I published last year, Coffee to Go. This one is definitely more on the kinky side. if you can see the cover of it, you know, there's definitely a lot of kink in here. It's BDSM with a lot of impact play, and the premise, there's it's a world where people are born with, and you can see, I actually indicate that with the artwork, that they both have the same mark on the back of their hands, as you can see here in the cover, and that's their soul mark, and people in their world are born with this mark on the back of their hand, and when they encounter their soulmate, their marks kind of connect them to each other, and they start to darken and everything. And then they kind of have a limited time to kind of consummate the bond. Otherwise, bad things happen to their biology and that kind of thing. So they're kind of, you know, they're drawn together and everything. And sadly, my one character Scott, once he realizes his soulmate's a man, kind of freaks out and runs off. And Ross has to kind of go after him. And this is where the whole BDSM and discipline parts kind of play a part into the story and everything. But it was a lot of fun to write. I do like my kinky erotic sex stories and everything. And I'm actually I'm in the middle of writing my next novel, which it's still in progress. It's about 3/4 of the way written. The title is Enslave My Heart, but I won't go into any more detail than that, because until the first draft is complete, it's hard for me to describe the story, because I don't know where. I mean, I actually have a pretty good idea of where I'm going with it in terms of where I want it to end, but between where I'm at now in the story and getting there, there may still be a few surprises that I haven't discovered yet, so there's that. But you know, if you have any interest in reading gay erotic romances, go ahead and in the link below, go look at my profile on Amazon and check them out. If you subscribe to Amazon Kindle Unlimited, you can read it for free. Otherwise, I know Coffee to Go I've discounted to 99 cents. I recently ran a promotion on Mark My Soul, so I wasn't, I currently can't run it. The promotion's ended, and I can't run another one until, because I can only do one promotion every 3 months, is what they allow me, and I'm locked out of lowering the price. So for right now, it's at full price at $3.88 for the ebook. And then you can also get paperback, obviously, and you can see the prices for those as well. So if you have any interest, please check them out. They're kind of my labors of love and my means of income. So if you want to get me a Christmas present, buy my book, please. All right, enough self-promotion on that. But those have been my big things this year. Was that, and and I should not forget, as a memoriam to Joey, my dog Joey. So for any longtime viewers, you know that I've had 2 dogs in my life, Joey and Lexi. My husband and I adopted them. Let's see, Lexi will turn 10 years old in 2020, so we adopted them in 2010. And Joey, sadly, he was diagnosed with cancer in October of 2018, and he went through chemotherapy and radiation and things December, January, and he did really well with the treatments and everything, and he had a lot of life left in him and everything. So his tumor shrunk, he was able to eat, he was able to play, able to take him to the dog park, and so he still had a full life for about a year, once his treatments were done. And I just kept taking him back to the hospital every 2 months or so to get his blood work checked and everything. And it was around August, September when the tumor started to grow again. It also got into his lymph system, and his lymph started growing. It got into his lungs, and so he was starting to have trouble breathing. And so by October, he was like, it was just on the cusp of, as long as he was on his medications, and he had a full cocktail of medications at that point, he was still full of life and running around and acting like he wasn't sick at all. But his lymph nodes around his neck were getting really, really bad and really big, and it was just a matter of time, like literally days, if not, weeks, maybe days, when his airway would get cut off, and then, it would have been like a rapid emergency, like he wasn't gonna make it. And so I chose, before that happened, before he had a chance to really suffer, I had an in-home vet that came in, and we did in-home euthanasia. I had friends around me, I had my roommate, and we were there, and we all kind of gave him a goodbye, and I gave him, I made him some fresh beef liver as his breakfast that morning, just so that he had a final delicious meal as his last meal and everything. And we loved him and played with him and hugged him, and then we said goodbye, and that was that. And he will always be missed. He was a wonderful dog. I know his sister misses him, and her eating habits have changed quite a bit since he's been gone, and I've been trying to figure out the best way to make sure that she eats and everything, and she's been eating. The first few days after he passed, she didn't eat, but I've got her eating again and everything, and she's been healthy, but I can tell that she definitely misses him. So doing my best right now, because I'm recovering from surgery. Right now is not the right time for me to look for another dog, but I do plan in 2020 on probably rescuing another dog and adding to the family, mainly because I think Lexi really does need a companion, especially when I'm not home. I mean, I'm home most of the time, but every now and again, I go out once a week and play pub quiz trivia with friends of mine, and I have to go run errands and doctor's appointments, that kind of thing. So she's left alone once in a while, and it would be good for her to have a companion. So I needed a dog that's really well compatible with her, but of course also one that I can love and enjoy, and one that's a little younger than Lexi, so that when she eventually passes on, that I still have a companion of my own as well. So, okay. I think this video is probably long enough. It's, long like I usually do anyway. Thank you for sticking with me and watching my videos all these years. I mean, it's been 8 years and counting. And while I don't do regular updates like I used to, I do plan on continuing this channel. I just update as I feel the need to, and that's it. If I decide to start doing a regular thing or not, you know, we'll see. But for right now, I'm just going to continue just updating when I feel like I have something to talk about. Next year might be interesting just because next year I plan on having my name change, but then next year is also the big election. And if you remember my old videos, I did a lot of opinion pieces, and I have a lot of opinions about what's going on politically in the United States right now. I've just kind of been holding my tongue on this channel, but maybe I'll expand and kind of get into that a little bit next year. So look forward to that. I hope everyone has a happy holidays, a Merry Christmas, a Happy New Year, everything. I hope you had a wonderful 2019. I wish you a wonderful 2020, and I will see you next year. Take care. Bye-bye.